Another video that talks to the modifications needed to get the fan shroud, the SPal dual 12-inch fans to kind of fit with regards to the CVF serpentine belt conversion kit. This here I'd like to just kind of walk through what I did on the installation, or the kind of the hookup. The installation of the Auto Cool 3. It's made in America. They said they tested it on in water. They say they submerge it. So you can essentially mount this inside anywhere you want. You can mount it in the engine bay, you can mount it in the car. It's got this dial here, so you might want to mount it closer inside the car. This box works in conjunction with the fans. There's a sensor here, right there. That sensor runs off of two small, maybe 22 gauge wires. That wire runs on the bottom of the core support on the inside, underneath the radiator, into here. These two sensor marks 4 and 5. When the radiator gets a temperature, or the water gets a temperature, that sensor inside of the lower radiator hose, I had cut it in. I don't know if it came with this because I bought my parts through a parts guy, but I was sent this and this. This is the sensor. As the water is flowing through your bottom, your return to radiator hose, you add this copper coupler with a threaded mount on it in the middle of your hose. You thread this in and you'll wire these two up to the sensors 4 and 5. As the water gets to a temperature in which you've set here, right? It doesn't tell me exactly what temperature there, and I don't see of any way of figuring out. The fans kick on. So what I wanted to highlight was this hose didn't come with the kit. It wasn't cut like this. I've put this on the radiator and the engine, looked for where this could go with stuff in my engine, where this could stick out, where it had room to kind of exist, and then I marked it with a piece of tape and I cut a circle in there that this fit in there. Then I did kind of just cut each side until it had enough room to wedge this in. There. Then you take your radiator hoses, and this comes out to about here, so you can orientate the screws so that you can get a screwdriver in there and actually tighten them up. And this is how it would sit under the car. I've got a number of other wires to run, and I'll talk through that here in a minute. In addition to those two wires, you've got just a general ground. I've just grounded that to the chassis. You've got a power, which I've run all the way to the battery. This is your ignition, which I used a auxiliary fuse box from Painless Performance. This empty one's for AC, which I don't have. And then these two are a ground and a switch, a power and ground for just a switch. That switch is to allow you to just turn on the fans full blast whenever you want. The power wire, as I said, runs. I ran it through the core support. It's all wrapped up. I wrapped it up with the other wires that are coming from the bottom. Now these are all 4 grounds. The middle 2 ground of the chassis, I've grounded that to the radiator bolt at the bottom, and I grounded the other one at the radiator bolt at the top. And then the 2 on the outside, the 2 bolts on the outside run to black wires. I used all of this is somewhere around 12 to 14 gauge. Those same black wires are wrapped with this power wire in here, right? And it goes all the way to here. It splits off. The power wire goes to the battery, and the other 2 go to these pigtail plugs. So you have a black and red pigtail for both fans. The reds, those connect together. I connected those into a single terminal, the one in red, the only one in red. I wired the 2 wires from each of these pigtails together, along with the power wire for the autocooler 3. And when the power wire came across the core support, I mated those 2 together, wrapped them in this configuration, and then the black wires, those go into the 2 pigtails. So essentially the 2 pigtails are power to the battery and then ground to the autocooler. Again, those are on each outside. You can see it says fan A and fan B, and then the 2 grounds in the middle are just going to the chassis, which I put to the radiator bolts down, one at the bottom, one at the top. Now to show you what this looks like, or how this works, there's these 2 wires here. All I did is put a Mach switch in here. Right there, it's the 2 black wires. I've left some slack here in case I needed to relocate it. This is just when I start the car that I've got it, but you come over here, turn the key, auxiliary power. Switch again, and it turns off. Going back to the auto cooler, I've got this gray wire, which is ignition. So you've got your battery, which is the one I showed you, the ignition, which is the one I'll talk to you in a minute, the general ground of the chassis, the 2 sensors to the lower radiator hose, to the sensor that I cut in. AC is not in use, and then these 2 are negative and positive for that switch that's used to turn the fans on full blast independently. This gray wire goes to this Painless Performance fuse panel. It's just an auxiliary fuse panel. So the thick red wire on this fuse panel, this external fuse box, goes to the battery. That gives it constant power. And I've got two sets of wires here. One set, which some of these I'm already using, so it's less than what I had originally. For instance, these two wires are ignition. So when I turn the ignition key on, these two wires will get hot along with that gray one that I use for the auto cooler, and as well as the I have another one for the Phytech. These three wires are constantly hot, so if I need something that just needs power all the time, regardless if the key's turned or not, then I would use those. This pink wire goes to a fuse that only gets hot with the key turned. So if I turn the key, that left side gets power, and you put it on the side that gets power. If the fuse pops, it'll still get power. If the fuse pops for that particular, whatever that, I don't know offhand what that protects, but if that pops, the rest of the stuff will still work.